Before we dive in, let me make some things clear. I love Resident Evil 2 Remake. It is one of my favorite games ever made. However, I am not a Resident Evil fan. The only games in this franchise that I've played are Resident Evil Remake, Resident Evil 2 Remake, and now Resident Evil 3 Remake. This video will not be about how well Resident Evil 3 works as a remake, since I frankly do not have the background for that discussion. If you're looking for that, I'd recommend the Sphere Hunters review. Her perspective seems especially apt, given that Resident Evil 3 Nemesis is her favorite game of all time. This is a video detailing how disappointed I am by this game, as someone who holds Resident Evil 2 Remake in extremely high regard. Resident Evil 3 Remake was probably my most anticipated game for this year, and it unfortunately fell short of that excitement. I haven't been able to stop thinking about it, and so I did several more playthroughs on higher difficulties and revisited Resident Evil 2 Remake to figure out where that disappointment was coming from. Do not expect this video to be a fair point-by-point analysis of everything it has to offer. It will be focused primarily on the negative aspects of the experience. I do not think this game is bad, but my disappointment is immeasurable and my day is ruined.
Kill me! Not now, I'm busy.
Yeah! Resident Evil 3 Remake could best be described as horror with action-y elements. It's a fairly linear romp through zombies, fish monsters, and other deadly parasites. While you are sometimes plopped into maze-like level design and asked to explore for progression items, you're mostly going to be fighting zombies through and through. Even on higher difficulties, running out of ammunition is rarely a concern, likely because the game knows how much you'll be fighting. Carlos even gets his own Horde mode segment. It's no surprise, then, that exploration isn't as important anymore. It does still exist. Safes, locks, and all other manner of secrets are scattered everywhere. It's just that you don't really have to work very hard to get all of it, and what you usually end up finding is just more ammo. There are only 2 unique safe combinations to learn, one in Raccoon City and the other in Spencer Hospital. If you've played Resident Evil 2 Remake, you can just transfer over those combinations for the police station. A lot of the other secrets are obtained through locks that Jill can open with her lockpick, but those secrets feel incredibly pointless. You don't have to do a minigame to use the lockpick, and your lockpick doesn't break or anything. You just go through a few more button presses to open a box. Sure, your lockpick takes up inventory space, but it only takes up 1 slot, and since you'll be chugging through ammo constantly, that 1 space isn't going to feel too valuable. Especially so when you consider that what you often get in these boxes is more ammo. I had my lockpick glued onto Jill with basically 0 penalty, and only ever gave it a second thought when writing this script. Raccoon City has 1 really cool set of secrets for finding 3 hidden gems, but the game never does anything like that again. Not to mention that these gems aren't exactly head scratchers. 2 of them are right across from each other. You just have to wait for the bolt cutters and lockpick to scoop them up on your way out. It was fun to explore the city for them, but it just can't live up to the police station. Resident Evil 2 Remake's police station is a masterclass in level design. It's definitely more on the survival horror end of the spectrum, a massive puzzle box teeming with hidden dangers. So many doors that require so many different keys, so many items to collect, multi-room puzzles to solve, zombies and lickers to avoid while exploring, just enough ammo to make it out alive. At first, it's daunting, but by the end, you'll know the station's ins and outs. You'll have a mental map drafted at all times. It's beautiful, and while the rest of the game never quite reaches those same heights, it does have 2 more pods that you explore in much the same way. The sewers and Umbrella Lab aren't as large or as complicated, but they do still ask you to solve multi-room puzzles and deal with new threats while you're busy exploring. Resident Evil 2 Remake, in other words, had expert level design for what it wanted to be, a survival horror game. It promoted a kind of slow tension where anything could be around the next corner and you just had to take everything 1 step at a time. Now, I wasn't going to hoist those expectations upon Resident Evil 3 Remake, since it doesn't feel like it's trying to be survival horror. Therefore, ditching the labyrinthian level design and tightening that focus into the enemy encounters instead makes a lot of sense. I think this is put to great effect in the bug maze, where you have to activate 4 circuit breakers while on the run from weird bug zombies. They're constantly on your ass in this mini maze, so you have to watch your back at all times and make sure you're taking an efficient route to minimize ammo usage. They're particularly deadly since they can infect you with a parasite, preventing you from dodging or running until you waste one of your herbs. It's a stressful kind of moment-to-moment horror, one not really seen in Resident Evil 2. It's dangerous. And yet, the rest of the game doesn't really reflect this atmosphere as effectively. Several of these levels are so straightforward that it boggles the mind. The underground lab is just a series of rooms and hallways where you fight enemies and pick up the key items sitting in plain view. You have to pick up 3 fuses and put them into the fuse box. Where are the 3 fuses? Well, just hop on a series of elevators and you'll have found them all. You have to mix together an antigen and an adjuvant to make a cure. Well, if you just walk into every available door, you'll have everything you'll need for it. This isn't a situation of finding the lock and finding the key, so much as it is go from point A to B, which again should be completely fine. It's not trying to go for the same mood as Resident Evil 2, but it's hard to deny that what you run into on those treks from A to B aren't nearly as engaging as they really should be. These fish monsters are a joke even on Nightmare mode, since they're weak to fire and only take a couple pistol shots to down after 1 fire grenade. It's laughable that they only ever throw them at you 1 at a time, even its cameo appearance at the end of the game. These creepy looking white zombies are supposed to be more of a roadblock, since you can knock them down but they'll keep coming back up. However, they're introduced so late that you can just kill every single one of them with a headshot using your Desert Eagle and still have rounds to spare for the boss. Very rarely are you asked to deal with a wave of zombies, and when you are, you're usually playing as Carlos, who has an assault rifle. Even these weird tentacle heads only take 2 shotgun blasts to the head, which again, won't be a problem because you'll have so much ammo to spare. The one new enemy type that feels sufficiently tense comes during the hospital. These hulking monstrosities that are quick as lightning and can dodge your bullets in the same amount of time that they're already right next to you. They are particularly devastating in packs of 2, put to amazing use in the underground lab with Jill during this one segment. It's even more daring on Nightmare mode, where all of the pods break open. All of your other encounters with them, though, are usually just one-and-done affairs in the hallways they're scripted to appear in. Carlos can rip into them with his assault rifle and punch them to the ground if they get a little too close. Resident Evil 2 didn't have amazing enemies either, but it at least has more threatening encounters than RE3. Dogs, for example, are a lot faster and come at you in greater numbers. The ones in RE3 are hilariously pathetic. One of your 2 encounters with dogs is right next to an electric generator that can instantly stun both of them, leading to a swift kill. Whereas Leon doesn't have any crutches, they're sprinting at you, barreling over fences, and you have to deal with them right now. It's the same for Claire in her segment with the dogs, as they barrel over 12-foot tall fences. The sewer monsters are more aggressive, shooting projectiles that you have to take care of in the swamp water, and they have a much less blatant weakness than the fish monsters. Lickers, in particular, are much scarier to deal with than their RE3 equivalents, though this admittedly has more to do with how each game handles your defensive options. For one thing, Leon and Claire don't have a dodge function. Since you have to run past zombies to avoid them, and they're often placed in narrow corridors, you'll either be wasting ammo to kill them, or wasting less ammo to stun them. One of those solutions is permanent, and the other is simply temporary. You're making a short-term versus long-term decision in RE2. Deal with the zombie now at the cost of my ammo, or deal with it when you have to come back later. And trust me, there are a ton of areas you'll be forced to come back to later. When dealing with Lickers, you have to walk so that they don't know where you are, which can be even more difficult as Lickers are often placed in areas with other zombies, or Mr. X will show up and force you to run, thereby alerting the Licker to your presence and forcing you to either deal with it or take the hit. In Resident Evil 3, you have a dodge button that can get you out of several bad situations. It usually works even if you don't time it right, but if you do time it right, you're basically invincible. Let's say Nemesis is chasing you. You've got to keep running so he doesn't catch up. But what do you do about the zombies in front of you, blocking your path? Imagine if you were forced to deal with them quickly. If this is supposed to be more of an action game, it would make sense for your precision aiming to be tested, and under the gun of a timer too. However, another appealing option exists. If you perfect dodge around the only zombie currently in your path, you won't have to deal with any of them and can just keep running. This applies to basically every enemy in the game. Jill can completely avoid them, and Carlos can punch them to the ground. As if that wasn't enough, both of them get a few seconds of slow motion and aim assist so that you can get a few pot shots into their weak points. This trivializes pretty much every enemy encounter. It isn't a particularly difficult timing to learn, and you'll probably be able to pull it off by accident a few times. Those late game bruisers can't even compare to the impact that lickers have because your defensive capabilities are so much stronger. If this was Leon or Claire, you wouldn't have any get out of jail free card. You just have to deal with the threats as they came. Now, even I can acknowledge that getting flanked by a zombie feels bad, so the addition of a zombie dodge button makes sense in theory. But Resident Evil 2 already had a brilliant solution for this. If you're getting flanked by a zombie and are put into a stun animation, you could waste a sub-weapon to get out without taking damage. You could waste your knife or one of your grenades to save face, but you'll always know that the stun grenade or knife would have been a lot more useful down the road. Sure, they had to make the knife a limited resource to achieve this, but I think that's a small price to pay considering how many knives you can pick up over the course of the game and how long it takes for them to break when you're using them normally. Resident Evil 3 brought back the knife as a permanent weapon, but with that change it also replaces the decision you'd have to make if you're attacked by an enemy. In this game, you just have to mash a button to take less damage, something you can change to a hold in the options to remove even more of its challenge. Also, yeah, I recognize that this option exists for accessibility, and it is extremely important to have it exist since many people physically can't do button mashing. I'm just highlighting that it renders the system a bit moot if you can just wander into the options and hold a button rather than needing to tap it fast to avoid more damage, and maybe puts into question why this has been turned into a button mashing minigame in the first place. It makes sense, I guess. You have witch time now, so why would they also allow you to use sub-weapons for escape? But it's hard not to notice that this system has gone from wasting resources to save your health bar into tapping a button with the right timing to avoid combat. It's a transition that makes total sense for an action-oriented game, but it maybe relies a little too much on enemies that were only really so threatening because they existed within Resident Evil 2's more limited framework.
I promise I'll meet up with you later. But don't worry.
Carlos!
Do you really think we can trust their great evacuation plan? Huh, it's just a piece of paper.
One thing you should know about me is that I am not a person who cares how long a game is, even if it's full price. Xenoblade Chronicles is one of my favorite games ever made, and it can run you over 100 hours if you're looking to do everything. Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance is really only 5 or so hours, and it is also one of my favorite games ever made. So, it shouldn't come as a surprise that I do not care that Resident Evil 3 only takes 4 or 5 hours to beat. I just don't care. What I care about is whether those 4 or 5 hours were fulfilling, whether I'd want to play the game again, and how much side content there is to tinker with. In terms of a value proposition, Resident Evil 2 Remake does unfortunately feel a lot more complete in this regard than Resident Evil 3 Remake does. Resident Evil 2 Remake lets you play as either Leon or Claire. Both of them go through more or less the same campaign, but they have different weapons, a few altered enemies and scenarios, a different story, and a few different key items. Not only that, once you play as one of them, you get access to the other character's B campaign, which is an abridged, more difficult version of the A campaign with a true ending to boot. You're getting at least 2 solid campaigns out of this, and 2 more if you want to see everything it has to offer. All the while, you'll be internalizing the layout of the entire game so you can come back and try higher difficulties, where saving is limited by ink ribbons and you're ranked based on completion time. Standard feels appropriately average in terms of difficulty, where hardcore is a substantial jump up. Zombies take more damage, you take more damage, ammo is far more scarce, and saving is now a resource to be managed. Your ultimate goal, then, is to master the game, to go from a bumbling idiot scared out of their pants into a professional zombie survivor. This progression from a weakling into a badass, from what I understand, has always been at the heart of the series. Getting an S+ ranking signifies that you can beat the game in record time with only a few saves. It's your award to show that you've seen it all, and it's obviously going to take more than 4 playthroughs to get there. Resident Evil 3 has much of that same drive. You can return on higher difficulties and achieve a ranking based on completion time. However, since the game is a lot more forgiving than RE2, for reasons I've already discussed, a standard mode playthrough already feels pretty tame. In fact, this game's hardcore mode resembles RE2's own standard mode, since you still get to use game-created checkpoints and can save whenever you want. It also takes more shots than average to kill an RE2 hardcore than an RE3 hardcore, which may also contribute to the lack of ammo in the former and the abundance of ammo in the latter. Pair that with the perfect dodge, and you have yourself a fairly breezy standard difficulty and a moderately challenging hardcore difficulty, which feels off. Nightmare and Inferno are only accessible after you clear hardcore, which doubled down on the idea that I really should not have wasted my first playthrough on standard. Even then, Nightmare mode still allows you to save whenever you want, and by that point, it seems a bit excessive. While item and enemy placements have been completely remixed, it still doesn't stop the tentacle heads from being killed in 2 shotgun blasts. It still doesn't stop the fish monsters from dying in only a few pistol blasts after they're set on fire. And it still doesn't stop the white zombies from dying to a shot in the head from a Desert Eagle or Carlos's assault rifle. Another problem is that, in a lot of ways, Nightmare mode is a pretty hit-or-miss remix. Some of the changes feel not only random, but fairly pointless. In Raccoon City, there's now a section where tentacle heads fall from the sky and you have to deal with 3 of them at once. Oh, whoops. I'm already gone because it took them ages to get up off the ground. You still only ever deal with 2 dogs at a time, you still only ever deal with 1 fish monster at a time, and the item placement changes are so minor that you'll barely even notice, not to mention that some of the weapon upgrades are exactly the same anyway. Hell, Jill even gets the Desert Eagle in the beginning of the game rather than as a late game upgrade. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Yeah, there are some appreciable differences, like the white zombies appearing in the police station and hospital much earlier, but since Carlos has a perfect punch and Jill has a perfect dodge, and they both have a weapon that can permanently take them out with a well-placed headshot, I really fail to see what this adds other than cheap shock value. Oh no, there's a zombie in this room now that wasn't there before. Just spam the dodge button though and you'll be fine. I'm not saying Nightmare mode isn't fun, but as a remixed difficulty option, it's kinda lame. And more importantly, it feels like it should have just been the default hardcore difficulty. One of the really cool things it does is have Frank follow you throughout the police station after you initially dispatch him. You can see him through the windows and he'll attack you in the locker room. That's really neat. I love that. But why couldn't this have just been in the game normally? Frank isn't difficult or anything, it's just a neat little detail that he follows you around. Honestly, it doesn't even go as far as I'd like. He really only attacks you again once, so why is this locked to Nightmare mode? It makes me feel like even hardcore mode was neutered, and you have to beat hardcore before you can even play Nightmare. While this does mean Resident Evil 3 has 5 different S ranks to complete, it feels like you have to really work to even get to the point where the game feels sufficiently difficult, and even then, there are one too many times where you can spam the dodge or punch button to brute force encounters. There is a pretty cool achievement shop, where you get points to spend for doing things like knocking the hats off zombies or shooting all the bobblehead toys. They're kinda like cheat codes, where you can toggle more inventory space, weapons, cosmetics, and the infinite rocket launcher for any of your playthroughs. It's fun to play around with, sure, but that's really it, besides some concept art. No original soundtrack option, no noir suit that turns the game black and white, no tofu zombie survival. It's hard not to feel like this game is a bit short on content overall, especially when it apparently straight up cut entire areas from the original with no replacements. Not that I would really know, but you can feel it in the pacing of the playthrough. You explore Raccoon City for over an hour of game time, you do your first boss fight with Nemesis, and escape into a section with Carlos at the police station which lasts about a half hour. But after the police station, you're immediately thrust into another boss fight with little to no warning. Nemesis literally falls into a river, Jill cracks a joke, and all of a sudden he's now a bloodborne monster. I would imagine this is the point where Jill would have an entire area to explore, so that the narrative can give time for Nemesis to evolve in the water. I guess not, and you go right back to Carlos as soon as the boss is done. Carlos also just disappears at the end of the game, only to show up out of nowhere to help you fight Nemesis. Was it not worth exploring how he ended up in the underground lab? As it stands, it feels like the game ends a bit too quickly, and it doesn't even end with Nemesis, it ends with this guy. Speaking of Nemi, I have yet to mention my biggest problem with this game.
I can't believe it! It's alive! It must still be after Jill!
More than the level design feeling inadequate, More than the difficulty options feeling too easy on the whole, more than the perfect dodge ruining that sense of danger, Nemesis is by far the biggest missed opportunity of Resident Evil 3 Remake, and I'm gonna be honest, his botched implementation is half the reason this video exists. My favorite thing about Resident Evil 2 Remake was Mr. X. This asshole would follow you through the entire police station while you were solving puzzles. He could enter any room that wasn't a safe room, and you could pinpoint where he was in the station based on only the proximity and volume of his footsteps. It's why it felt like a crime that it didn't win Best Sound Design at the Game Awards. When Mr. X was hunting you, it was the highlight of the entire game for me. I have never felt so helpless, I've never felt so anxious, I've never felt so in danger. A lot of the time, I'd just wait in the safe room, desperately concocting a safe route in my head, part of me too frightened to even take the first step. So, when Resident Evil 3 is announced, and everyone including Capcom are hyping up Nemesis, it was hard for me not to get excited about it. Nemesis was apparently even more threatening than Mr. X. He was faster, followed you through the entire game, and could carry weapons. I don't think Mr. X is perfect. He's a little too slow, making him easy to avoid on subsequent playthroughs, and he drops off the face of the earth after the police station, where he definitely could have shown up again in the sewers and lab. Well, he does show up in the lab, but it's basically scripted. Nemesis definitely lived up to those expectations in the Raccoon City section. His first appearance is abrupt, and immediately he's on your ass. He's faster than Mr. X, he looks scarier than Mr. X, and he is most certainly more aggressive than Mr. X. I was used to the sound of those footsteps when Mr. X was walking, so to hear those same footsteps chained together into a full-on run behind me was terrifying. He jumps in front of you while you try to escape, he starts shooting fucking rockets at you, he will wait outside certain buildings and just watch you through the fucking window? More so than Mr. X, who hunted you, Nemesis is a stalker, which is why it pains me to say that he's really only effective in one or two areas. Your first encounter with him is great. I love trying to make it to the subway control system while he jumps around and tries to clock you. Then, when he gets the rocket launcher, it's also pretty scary. While you're running down the alley, he's lining up his rocket launcher shots, so you not only have to avoid his rockets, you have to deal with the zombies placed in your way. It's not exactly what I wanted, since RE3 doesn't really have much in the way of non-linear level design, but this is fine too. I don't mind him only appearing in specific sections as long as he's always on your ass in those sections. The problem is that these two sections are the only times where this rings true. In between them, he gets a flamethrower, and initially it creates the same feeling of dread. Oh god, Nemesis has a flamethrower now, but when you get into the building, it turns into an Uncharted chase sequence. You can literally hold forward the entire way through, and all of the tension instantly dissipates because you're just on a roller coaster ride now. This happens again later in the game on two separate occasions where you just hold forward in pretty cinematics. At least this one is capped off by a cool boss fight. Story-wise, it also leads to a fantastic moment a bit later. Jill thinks he's dead, and while the player certainly knows he isn't dead, they must at least think that Nemesis won't be appearing again for a little while. But mere moments later, Nemesis drops down off a building with a surprise rocket launcher. It makes one thing clear. Nemesis is going to be on your ass the entire game. And I was all for that. And then, the latter half of the game hits. Nemesis becomes a Bloodborne boss. He only appears either in boss fight form or in QTE segments, and he mysteriously disappears from his second boss fight all the way to his final boss fight. There is just no appearance at all. Hell, at least Mr. X actually got to chase you for 5 seconds in the underground lab, and you could potentially die to him because of the plant monsters in your way. Nemesis gets a cutscene escape, and a section where you simply hold the analog stick forward for a minute. See, while Mr. X felt like an imposing figure throughout the game, even if his disappearance halfway through was disappointing, Nemesis goes from a terrifying stalker to a silly monster in record time. He stops pursuing you for so long that you'd be forgiven for thinking he was just dead. Instead, this asshole gets the villain spotlight because he wants to go sell combat data or whatever. Like, who cares about you? Where is Nemesis? See, I don't know if Nemesis was always supposed to turn into this big fuck-off monster in the original. Maybe he was always intended to turn into this, but if so, that's just so lame. He loses his threatening aura when he's in this form. It just turns into a perfect dodge fest as he runs around screaming. That's not scary to me. You know what's scary? An 8-foot-tall zombie man with a fucking rocket launcher barreling towards me while I'm trying to pick up items and deal with the zombies in my path. Not a glorified spectacle fighter boss that you fight 2 times, might I add, with very minimal differences. The camera is glued to his body during these fights, eliminating any sense of perspective I might have had, and refusing to zoom out so I can get my bearings. Dodging his attacks feels like baby's first spectacle fighter. His tails are so damn long, the perfect dodge is a really lenient timing window, and even if it isn't a perfect dodge, you'll probably be out of the way of the attack anyway. I appreciate the effort, I really do, but I don't think boss fights were ever the best parts of these games. As much as I love Resident Evil 2, the bosses are not usually what come to mind. A lot of them are just bullet sponges you have to play keep away with, meant to drain your ammo and force you to scrounge for more. When Nemesis is in this form, I don't know what I'm fighting. It's a big scary beast, that's for sure, but it's not Nemesis, not the one I was familiar with. It's a ripoff of the blood-starved beast with a non-functioning camera. Granted, I really enjoyed the spectacle of his final phase. Ramming a railgun through his mouth was pretty satisfying, and this would have been a fun victory lap if Nemesis didn't lose his intimidating appearance from earlier, but oh well. I know what the game was trying to do here. They were trying to build up to this huge transformation over time, to show just how dedicated and persistent he was, but it ended up transforming him into something unrecognizable. Something that just gives up on you for a couple hours, only to pop back up at the end for a final hurrah. Honestly, he doesn't even feel mechanically consistent when he is chasing you. Sometimes you can down him for upgrades, like his first appearance, but when he comes down with the rocket launcher, you can put in all the effort you want. He won't drop an item. It just becomes wasted ammo that you'll never get back. And most of the time, he just drops ammo. Like, why would you waste your ammo just to get more ammo? There are in fact specific times you have to be downing him, you see. In this segment, you're supposed to run. Why would you even try to fight? Just run away from the big scary man. Run away during our scripted set piece. Just let the roller coaster whisk you away. Resident Evil 3 is a roller coaster ride. It can still be a fun ride, but it's fun in a fleeting way. You can gawk a bit at the spectacle, you can breeze through the game with little difficulty, and you can enjoy the story for what it is. But if you wanted anything more out of it, you're not gonna find it. You're on rails. Resident Evil 2 Remake felt more open, almost all of your decisions played into this meaningful survival horror adventure. Resource management actually felt like a factor, you had to juggle puzzle solving and exploration alongside this monster in a trench coat, and its level design was consistently labyrinthian, with enemies and obstacles you had no choice but to engage with. It was chilling, it was terrifying, but it was also fun. Resident Evil 3 is a decent experience, but only just barely. And that's depressing to say out loud. Just have some well-deserved fun today. Maybe with something else.